Alrighty, everybody, welcome. This is the second session for the men's SRH series that we're in. If you were in the first session, which was last month, we talked about sort of the total health picture and longevity. Was laying the foundation, and we're going to kind of build off of that. If you missed that one, that is going to be uploaded. I believe that's on the Breathe Strong website, Breathe Strong CF website, or on their YouTube channel. I can't remember which. But if you go to the link, the same link that you used to register to come here, you can look at resources and you can go back and watch that. Myself, Billy Fritsch, Joe Borez here, both of those guys are on the Breathe Easy International Men's Advocacy Team. I'm the president of Breathe Easy International, and we all have CF, and we have all dealt with some or all or a variable of some of the conversation that we're going to have tonight. And so we want you to know that we want to help the next generation or even this generation avoid some of the pitfalls. And so that's what this series is about, and we want you to be comfortable in it. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Anthony Evans. He's a good friend of mine, a doctor of chiropractic and functional health, and he's going to bring the presentation about what does the total hormone picture look like. Take it away, Tony.
Yeah, Ruben, thank you so much. Happy to be here with you guys and share this information. Hopefully, you'll find it useful and impactful in your life. Let me share my screen here. All right. So my goal tonight really is to give you kind of an overview from the functional medicine perspective on men's hormones health and how it speaks to you, men that are dealing with cystic fibrosis. I want to keep it kind of high level. We'll definitely have some time at the end to go over some questions. I'm Dr. Anthony Evans. Ruben was saying, I've been a chiropractor for almost 18, 19 years now. Got into functional medicine about 10 years ago. And my career has taken me from Colorado Springs, Colorado, back to Kansas City, where all my family's at. And that's where Ruben and I met. And, it's been an awesome journey. I've worked in a corporate setting for a period of time for a large corporation here in town, working as their chiropractor and really working side by side with a lot of medical professionals. And what I found was that, many times we treat the symptoms pretty well in this country, but we don't really get to the root cause, right? And so that's what led me into this functional med world. And maybe you've heard that term, functional medicine, not quite sure what it is, but functional medicine is really an approach that's individualized, that's personalized, that's focused on trying to get to the root cause of maybe the health challenges that we're having, resolve those so that we don't have to rely on as many pills and procedures and those kind of things. And you'll see it. We focus on genetics, your environment, your lifestyle. We'll talk about some of that stuff tonight. But many times we can maybe support your chronic illness or resolve some things that make life a lot more enjoyable by getting to the root cause. And so we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through here. Now, I want to mention some of the hormones. These are some of the big players. They affect women too, but definitely for men. And when we talk about hormones, they really are just chemical messengers that are telling our body what to do when. Testosterone, I know you guys have a whole module next time on testosterone, but it's going to support your muscle to maintain muscle mass and grow muscle mass. It's going to help you have energy. It affects our mood and our libido. DHEA, which is really the precursor to all those sex hormones, super important, but it also affects our immune system. Estrogen, usually thought to be a women's hormone, but we need some too, and this will affect our mood, our bone health, and our brain health. Cortisol, I want to talk about cortisol here in a minute a little bit more, but cortisol is that stress hormone. So when we are stressed out, we are producing lots of cortisol. Many times it's going to block our production of those sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen, but it very much affects our weight, our mood. When it's elevated for a long period of time, it's going to cause chronic inflammation. Those thyroid hormones do matter. They will affect our energy and our metabolism. And then insulin is a big hormone in the body that really tells us to store fat, store that energy. And so we need to maintain good blood sugar regulation to be healthy. And all of this is interrelated. There's nothing that's kind of siloed or separated. Everything is working together in your body. And so when one is elevated, it's usually affecting many other hormones in your body. Now, I want to first kind of talk about this kind of overview. And so I think I can't really talk about hormones without talking about stress. Stress comes in different forms in our life. And so I want you to start thinking about maybe where your sources of stress come from. I categorize stress into three categories. Physical stress are the things, car accidents, sports injuries, maybe things that we can't prevent, but being on a laptop or a computer in poor posture for long periods of time. A lot of us have, jobs and roles where we spend a lot of time in front of technology in a seated position usually, and we're just a lot more sedentary than we need to be. And this will start to affect your musculoskeletal system, your nervous system, your immune system, and your metabolism. And so, very important to start looking at sources of physical stress and maybe start to address those. And so your systems can run better. Second form of stress, this is a really big category. This is chemical stress. Now, this is anything and everything you put in and on your body. So I want you to start and take a minute and start thinking about that. What are we washing our clothes in, right? Maybe there's toxins in the soaps and lotions and things that we're putting on our skin or up against our skin with our clothes. And then our skin is one of our largest organs. And so we're absorbing these chemicals. And many of these chemicals can be endocrine disruptors, meaning that they disrupt our hormones and can really put things out of balance. Lots of toxins and chemicals that come through our food. And so that's a big area to start looking at is maybe we're ingesting things that are very toxic. One of them being glyphosate, which is Roundup, these pesticides, these herbicides, very damaging to your gut and also the hormone systems of the body. Alcohol is also a toxin. Okay, so that's our chemical stress. And then this last category is emotional stress, maybe less talked about, but equally as important. And this could be the constructs of your job or relationships or the family dynamic that you're in, or maybe just being overwhelmed with not feeling well, navigating, this medical maze and having some physical challenges that just linger long enough that we really emotionally become beat up. And so for other of us, maybe it's, our self-talk and we're kind of harsh to ourselves. So one of my pillars of health is detoxification to kind of help us cleanse some of these chemical toxins. And sometimes even detox happens in the mind. But we got to start thinking about where stress is coming from and start addressing these areas because they really do disrupt your hormones. Now, I want to kind of give you this next slide is just kind of really showing the response that happens when we're stressed. And you'll see things happen up in the brain and the hypothalamus, all the way down to secrete these catecholamines. And these are things like epinephrine, norepinephrine. So think about if I'm a big outdoors person, so we're out hiking on the trail, the bear jumps out. My physiology is going to prepare me to either run, fight that bear, or hopefully not freeze, but that would be the third option. And so my physiology is getting ready to prepare me for that. So my heart rate is going to increase. My liver is going to start breaking down stores of glucose, which is glycogen, and releasing it into my system. So now I've got a bunch of glucose coming into my bloodstream to supply me with a fuel so that I can run. My digestive system is going to slow down. My blood pressure is going to increase and it's going to create some dilation in my lungs. And so this is all very appropriate in that moment where that bear is jumping out so that I can find safety, get to the cave, and then I can calm down. But what I typically find is that we are stressed in life, right? Like we're on the treadmill of life. There's no real bear, but the stress lingers and our physiology kind of stays in this state where we're not worried about procreation and digestion. Your brain thinks that we need to still run. This is also one of the reasons why exercise is such a powerful de-stressing tool to kind of reset the physiology. But these are the physiological changes when we're stressed. And so we don't want to stay in this place for a long, long period of time. Otherwise, we're going to have downstream consequences. Now, this is a slide. I apologize. It's a little blurry, but this is a slide I probably show more patients than any other slide. We call this the cortisol steal. Okay. So we have cholesterol. About 80% of cholesterol is made by your liver. Only maybe 20, 15, 20% really comes from your diet. I know we typically vilify cholesterol in this country, but you need cholesterol. It's very important. Coach your nervous system for conducting signaling through the nervous system. Every cell of your body is wrapped in a lipid bilayer, which is that outer layer of every cell in your body. And all these hormones are made from cholesterol. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But cholesterol gets turned into a mother hormone called pregnenolone. And it's kind of like you're in that fork in the road here. So for stressed, we're going to go over here and make cortisol, that stress hormone. Or if everything's balanced and happy, we can kind of go both directions and we can make testosterone and estrogen and all these things that we need for optimal health. But we call it the cortisol steal because if we're chronically stressed, cortisol production is really stealing the raw ingredients that we normally need to make testosterone and estrogen and DHEA. And so when we test individuals, we typically see low testosterone in men and low DHEA because their stress level is so high. So one of the very first kind of things to start working on is dealing with the stress. So that's why I bring that up. Now we got to talk a little bit specific to those of you with cystic fibrosis and how this can kind of affect your hormones. There's actually a cystic fibrosis related diabetes, which is kind of a unique form where you actually have the characteristics of type 1 and type 2. But what happens is you're in a chronic inflammatory state many times with these reoccurring respiratory infections. And that's going to create a kind of a high release of cytokines. And so it continues this chronic inflammation state and keeping the cortisol levels elevated, as I was showing you on that previous slide, is going to lower your testosterone. Okay. Many times we have some absorption issues and nutritional deficiencies. And so we're going to be low in many of these nutrients and vitamins that the body needs to heal and repair and run biochemical pathways and really produce and balance those hormones in the body. And sometimes we have to use a lot of antibiotics to fight some of these infections. And then the antibiotic is also going to kill some of the good bacteria in your gut. And then that's going to kind of set us back a little bit because the gut microbiome, all these little critters that are living in our gut are really there to produce many of these nutrients or help break down some of our food or produce some of the vitamins that we can't produce ourselves. And so we're kind of disrupting the gut microbiome and then eventually going to see some other downstream consequences from that. Now, Ruben asked that I include this. As I was mentioned, there's a lot of nutrients that can be depleted from various situations. Sometimes the medications that we have to take are also going to deplete us in nutrients. And one of the things that I see very common is that in our general lifestyle, based on the diet maybe that we're eating and the things that we're doing and the toxins that we're putting in and on our body, we're already a little low or maybe even deficient in some of these vital nutrients that we need. And then we overlay that with a medication that's also going to deplete a certain nutrient or maybe several nutrients in your body. And so this is a resource that it's hard to see on here, but we are going to include tonight and you guys will have access to, but it's a whole chart that's going to show you these different classes of medications. And then it's going to show you what nutrients would be depleted if we were taking those medications. So you can kind of go, oh, wow, maybe I need to be adding back in both through my diet, maybe with supplementation to really get enough of these nutrients to help your body keep up with the demands and maybe the depletion of some of the medications that you're taking. So, lots of things that we can do. I wanted to kind of give you guys some lifestyle stuff to start thinking about, start addressing that can support your hormone health. Nutrition is at the foundation of that. You need lots of healthy fats. These are things like avocados and nuts and olive oil. Those are going to help your production of testosterone. Need lots of protein too. We need to maintain our lean muscle mass. We need to be making muscle. And so we need to get high quality protein in our diet. Some minerals like zinc and magnesium are very important. I would say magnesium is one of the most efficient nutrients that I see people have when we're testing. When you're more stressed out, you're going to burn through magnesium more. And if you're not supplying your body with that on a daily basis, you're going to become deficient anyway. And then maybe some of these meds are bringing that down even further. So magnesium is a really important one. And then we need to start limiting those processed foods, those ultra processed foods that we're eating, the high sugar stuff. We really want to try to avoid these insulin spikes where, we eat a lot of sugar, we have the donut or whatnot, it spikes our glucose, and then the pancreas is going to try to release a bunch of insulin and to try to bring that back down. And then eventually we kind of get that sugar crash, and then the adrenal system is going to release a bunch of cortisol to try to bring you back up. And going through that cycle many times throughout the day, those peaks and valleys, very problematic, and then ultimately leading to insulin resistance. And we don't want that. We got to manage stress and sleep. I think sleep is one of those low-hanging fruit areas that everybody can start to address. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and getting quality sleep is going to help all aspects of your health, but certainly your hormone balances and your testosterone production. Lots of fun sleep hacks, things that we can talk about at the end if you guys want to. But that is just one of those easy foundational things to really try to prioritize, and you'll see some benefits right away. Exercise. Whoops, sorry guys. Moving your body, exercising, not only is it going to de-stress the body, you're going to maintain your lean muscle mass, but that's going to help boost your testosterone. It's going to start to improve that insulin sensitivity, which is really important to avoid developing the insulin resistance and then ultimately some form of diabetes. It's just good for the brain. It's good for the body. And our lifestyles now have become so sedentary that we have to really intentionally focus on movement. Absolutely think going to the gym and strength training is super powerful. We need to bring that in. But first and foremost, I want you just to think about being more active in your lifestyle. When I practiced in Colorado, just culturally, we were just so active. So we didn't have to think so much about going to a gym. It was, hey, do you want to go for a bike ride? Do you want to hike this 14er this weekend? Do you want to, walk on this trail? And so start thinking about ways that you can just mix in even small amounts of exercise has really shown to make really large improvements in our overall health. And then lastly, maybe there's some supplements that you want to look at bringing into your lifestyle. Vitamin D is a really important one. That's another one that I chronically see people low in, and we typically have an really a decrease in immune function as that vitamin D goes down. And so it's really hard. We make vitamin D from being out in the sunlight, through our skin, but a lot of us do not get enough adequate sun exposure every day. And even studies show people that live close to the equator still don't get enough vitamin D. I know here in Kansas City right now, it's like 20 some degrees out. When I go outside, I'm all bundled up. So I'm really not getting that sun exposure. And this may be something to really think about getting checked if you haven't had it checked, so you kind of know where you're at. And then supplementing, you will not be able to produce enough testosterone with enough vitamin D in the system. Zinc and magnesium, I kind of mentioned those before. Magnesium glycinate is my favorite kind of overall magnesium for the body. That would be the one I recommend starting out with. And then you can look at maybe some of these adaptogenic herbs that will help really calm down that stress response in the body. Balancing that stress response, bringing cortisol back down, is going to free up your body to then take those raw ingredients and go make more testosterone, estrogen, and those kind of things. So, a couple things to look for. If you're feeling like you're just low energy, you're noticing that your kind of muscle tone is lower, you're losing some muscle tone, or you're feeling like you're not recovering after doing some of the workouts, Maybe you're noticing some mood swings. Maybe even you've gained some weight or your weight has fluctuated a little bit. Maybe you're noticing some cognitive things like brain fog. These would be symptoms to kind of watch for that maybe those hormones are getting out of balance. Maybe we need to seek some additional guidance on how to address that. These are some tests I put on here that you might start looking at if you're not having regularly checked, that you might want to have included. Checking your testosterone, your total T, and then also free and bioavailable T can be very helpful. There's different ways to check your DHEA level, or DHEAS, which is my favorite is on the saliva test, but they can check that in your blood as well. The range is really large on the blood work, so it's kind of hard to know um, really where you're at. So there's a saliva test that's ideal for that, as well as the cortisol test. Tracks your cortisol rhythm throughout the day because your cortisol changes all throughout the day. Should be as highest point first thing in the morning. It's going to taper down and hopefully be the lowest point in the evening, and that'll allow you to go to bed. So one of the other indications that maybe that cortisol system is off is if you're having a hard time going to sleep at night, or maybe you're kind of wired but tired. You can't shut that brain off. And that's usually because your cortisol level is too high at night. And so worth getting that checked. Checking the thyroid can definitely affect our metabolism and energy. There are tests to look at your vitamin mineral levels. Some of those are pretty simple to do on the blood work. And then, if you're not finding what you need, maybe you want to seek, a functional medicine doctor, someone that's going to kind of look at things from a different lens and kind of support you through your lifestyle. And so just to kind of wrap up, the hormones play a huge role in how we feel, how we function, um, really speaking to our quality of life. And so it is important that we're taking the lifestyle efforts to avoid the toxins maybe that we're exposing our body to that could be disrupting your hormones, and then doing these little lifestyle components to really give your system the ability to produce naturally hormones. And sometimes with cystic fibrosis, you're going to have some unique challenges, whether it's more insulin resistance, more chronic infections that are going to challenge you and challenge those hormone systems. And so these natural approaches are just going to kind of make that a little bit easier on you, and maybe even make some of the treatments that you're undergoing more effective and less downside to them, because you may not be dealing with all the nutritional deficiencies that are coming from maybe the meds and things that you're taking. So little changes in your lifestyle really do matter, especially if we're doing these things consistently over a long period of time. And I think that's all I got. I want to wrap up and leave some time for questions or discussion. I know Ruben um, has really played in a lot of these spaces with the lifestyle stuff and can really speak to that personally. And yeah.
Tony, thank you so much. If you want to stop the screen share there. Well, just before we go into the Q&A, and I want to let anybody know, so if you had questions there, please keep them. You can even drop them into the chat here over on the side. Because a lot of the folks that registered doesn't look like they were able to attend tonight, I want to actually ask a couple of questions and actually clarify a few things. And then if you have questions, we definitely want to get to them. So hold on to them or put them in the chat now or be thinking about them. But Tony, thank you so much for this presentation. Super, super wealth of knowledge there. And I really appreciate that if any of you did see or did attend last month, you'll see how this really built off of that. And that's where I would actually encourage you now to go back and watch that if you missed that first session, because Tony talked about a number of things, nutrition specifically. Well, we had a registered dietitian from KU Med here in Kansas City come and talk about those healthy fats a little bit more in depth, talk about magnesium and zinc and things like that even more in depth, how to get those things naturally through the foods and your intake, but also types of supplementation. And then, of course, our own Billy and Joe here presented on the fitness side and talked about some of the basics of exercise, some of the pitfalls and some of those things to avoid, and then how to encourage you to step into that space. All of those things building into this total sort of hormone picture that we're talking about here. So you can see how those build off of each other. As Tony did allude, next month we will be talking about testosterone and hypogonadism in depth and what that looks like, and how to operate in it, how to still flourish and thrive in that space. And I also want to clarify, I think, unfortunately, because of some of the medical community or misconceptions out there, when we start to talk about more of these sort of naturopaths, these more natural ways to support our systems, I know for me in the past, and I know a number of CF patients tend to tune that out because we say, well, I wouldn't be alive if it weren't for this pill and this medication and this thing or whatever, which is true. However, we can all do a lot better if we blend. There's a marriage in this space. And so, one of the main reasons that I really, really wanted to invite Dr. Evans here was because we do that. He's actually my doctor, in addition to my friend and on our board and all of these things. He's my physician, or one of my physicians. And so he's not ignorant of the fact that we are at a major disadvantage. He's not ignorant of the fact of needing different medications, literally, to stay alive. But our goal for my health, and the goal here, is to show you how these things can work in concert, how you can be taking Trikafta, or you can be taking lung nebulizers, you can be using antibiotics to fight these infections, but how can you also support your system naturally to thrive in it, to recover from hospitalizations faster, to avoid those hospitalizations whenever possible, how to build your immune system so you are less likely to get those infections. But then when you do, or if you do, how to recover quicker, how to rebuild that muscle, how to rebuild that longevity quicker. And so I would hope that nobody here would tune that out when you start talking about these sort of more natural remedies. But we aren't saying throw out one and do all of the other. We're saying these are ways that can support your whole system. And he's right. I've really put myself through that over the years of how we're even talking about Tony and I starting to address my cortisol levels. These reoccurrent infections, these a lot of the medications that we're on. I'm on long-term prednisone. I'm a lung transplantee. And so I'm on a number of medications that their entire goal is to disrupt my system. The anti-rejection meds do exactly that. They're actually designed to agitate, essentially, in a simple way of saying it, your system and disrupt your system. And so how can I naturally bring some of these cortisol levels down? How can I do other things through exercise and through nutrition to offset what these medications, the side effects of these medications, so that I can live 20 years, 30 years, 40 years on these lungs and not worry about hitting adrenaline fatigue or these crashes or a number of these other things. And so, yeah, it's a tall order, but the encouraging thing here, and I know that Tony touched on it a number of times, it's not all at once, right? There is baby steps in here. Just adjusting one or two things in your diet, or thinking about adding one or two supplements to where you're not. Those little increments add up over time. 1% better every month ends up being 12% better by the end of the year, right? And so there are these little things, these little bite-size, pun intended, things that you can do. And for me, exercise is a massive one. And so again, I encourage you to go back and watch the previous session. I want to call a couple things to the chat. Joe was able to drop the nutrient depletion guide that Tony alluded to. He had that slide up there real quick. That is a really, really cool piece of information. I saw it on the back of Tony's door when I was there for an adjustment one day, and I said, I got to have that. How can we have that for this session? That's an incredibly valuable tool. It's very plain and simple. You can go, oh, I'm on these, so probably some of these things might need to be addressed nutritionally or supplement wise. It just makes you more aware of sort of a cause and effect. That's a really simple way of putting it. It's a cause and effect. If I need to be on these meds, these are things that I probably need to address. So that's a great piece. I would encourage you to click it, download it, keep it for yourself, and even bring it into your clinic. It might be worth bringing into your clinic the next time you go and say, Doc, hey, can you work through this with me a little bit? And then maybe even they would suggest some labs based on that information to take a look at for you and see, okay, yeah, no, you are deficient in these areas or something like that. Vitamin D, Tony, you mentioned that. That's a huge one for CF patients. And I would say, I mean, I know for myself, I'm tested regularly for vitamin D. The thing that I didn't know until I started testosterone therapy was how important it was as a hormone transporter, and how in general CF clinics, they kind of look at the bare minimum. They look, as long as you're over a certain number, and usually that number is like 30, 32, something like that, they consider you okay. But when I actually went to go and start getting testosterone therapy, what ended up happening was they said your vitamin D is too low. And I said, well, my clinic said it was fine. And they said, well, it's fine, but it's not optimal. And they basically refused me to start testosterone injections. They said there's really no point in us starting to inject you with testosterone until your vitamin D level is optimal, because we could shoot you all up with this stuff and your vitamin D wouldn't be transporting it. You'd be sort of wasting a big portion of it and actually be dealing with side effects unnecessarily, because we'd have to probably use more than your body actually needs because it's not being transported well. So I was actually for a full month on a mass vitamin D regimen and actually doubled my number. And then they said, okay, let's start testosterone. And so some of these nutrients that we've heard before, you guys know the ADEX vitamins that come out in CF clinics. You've had the healthy fats conversation, likely, if you're on Trikafta. But in most cases, those clinics are talking about the bare minimums. They're not talking about optimal. And unless you're talking to generally a functional medicine doctor, or you've got an exceptional doc, and I'm not saying all doctors in CF clinics are ignoring these things. It's just in general, we have such a big and broad health picture that it's a lot for any one physician to tackle, especially in a CF clinic, when they're literally just trying to keep you alive. And so these tidbits of, okay, keeping me alive is great, but I'd really like to thrive. I'd really like to do better. That's when we start talking about what are these holes that we can fill? What are these things that we can kind of plug in to now not just allow you to survive? How can we make you excel? And that's a conversation that has been really rare in the CF community. Most of the conversation is, well, the best I can hope for, ... We don't believe that. Our team, our men's health team here in Breathe Strong CF, that's why they have those exercise grants. Guys, if you're not taking advantage of Breathe Strong CF's exercise grants, do it. Those grants out there can pay for a gym membership. They can pay for swimming. They can pay for these different things. That money is sitting there to help you engage in this. And this is really the partnership with Breathe Strong CF and BEI, our organization, is that you would do better. And they literally have $500 on the table to help you do that. And so all of this stuff kind of comes together in concert.